back, everyone. So I just want to go ahead and walk us through the different challenges that are laid out for us in this particular essay project. So we're challenged to write an essay with a coherent and purposeful structure and organization that resists the limiting nature of the 5-paragraph essay, meaning we're not writing a 5-paragraph essay. So by coherent, I mean that it makes logical sense. One point logically connects to the next one, that everything fits together in a way that makes logical sense. Purposeful, I just mean that you're thinking consciously about the way that you're structuring the essay. You're making choices in how you're organizing points. How would one point fit better in a certain area of the essay versus in another, for example? So really I want you to think consciously about the way you're organizing and structuring the essay. We are challenged to puzzle through confusing or interesting ideas and concepts, to push the limits of our thinking, seeking to use writing as a way of learning for us. So in other words, this is us putting into practice working at the edge of our own understanding, meaning that we're using writing as a mode of learning. We're not trying to prove or write about something. We're actually using our essay as a way for us to discover our own thinking and to just share that with our readers, how we are coming to a greater understanding of something. We're challenged to cite at least 5 relevant and credible texts, 3 of which must come from the library's online databases. And again, I'll post another video and more resources about the library's resources for you guys to take a look at. We're challenged to incorporate textual evidence from our selected sources, integrating quotations effectively, using signal phrases to introduce quotations, and providing context for our readers. So to incorporate textual evidence, in other words, we want to include quotations, right? Now when we integrate a quotation, it means that we're making it fit into the essay. We're not just throwing it in there, we're making it fit to show our readers that it belongs in there. So in order to do that, we need to introduce quotations with signal phrases. So a signal phrase, again, is a phrase that introduces a quotation. The most basic one would be Tyson states, and then immediately you follow it with a quotation. But there are several different ways that you can go about creating signal phrases, but it's important that we do that to attach the quotation to our own writing so that, again, it is integrated. It shows that it fits in there. We also want to make sure that we're providing context for our readers. Context meaning the surrounding details, so that we know, our readers know what the quotation is referring to. We want to make sure that things make sense for our reader, especially because it's more than likely that your reader has not read all of the sources you're using, right? So you need to make sure that you're providing enough context or background information that surrounds the quotation so that it makes sense to them, right? We're challenged to put our sources into conversation with our own ideas. How can we synthesize these different sources with our own ideas? So the word synthesize, to synthesize, means to combine, to take different pieces from different sources and combine them in such a way where it creates a new idea or a new piece of information. I like to use baking as an example. So when we lay out all the ingredients that go into making a cake on the kitchen counter, if we just set it all, everything out side by side, that doesn't mean that we have a cake. We just have all the different components of a cake, right? In order to synthesize the ingredients, we need to combine them in various proportions at various times, temperatures, etc., in order to combine them together to create the new idea, which is the cake, right? But all the individual components on their own don't create that cake. We need to synthesize them together. So we want to do that with our ideas, the different sources that we're using. We want to make sure that we're combining ideas from different sources to create new ideas. And so when we say to put things into conversation, we want to think about what makes a good conversation. So when we have multiple people involved in a conversation, each person should be contributing to that conversation in such a way where it moves it forward, right? We're not just repeating the same thing over and over again. We're adding new bits of information in order to push the conversation forward. If you want to think about it, each of your sources are the members of this conversation. And you, as the writer of this essay, are the moderator. You're the most dominant voice because you're kind of putting these things together for your readers. We're challenged to think about our audience and our purpose for writing this. What's our rhetorical situations? We talked a little bit about this in class. The rhetorical situation is just the set of circumstances you find yourself in when you're writing this particular project. So we want to think about who our audience is. So who is involved in that audience? What do they already know about the topic? What are their expectations? How would you go about presenting that information to your audience in the most effective way? What is your purpose for writing this? So remember, we're not trying to convince or persuade our audience. We're just trying to show them how we worked our way to a greater understanding of something. So we're just essentially showing them how we've put these different pieces of information together to create new information. So think about your tone. So how does this influence the way you approach your essay? Remember that our tone should be invitational, not confrontational, right? If we feel like we're being yelled at, and we're not going to read it, right? That turns our readers off. So we want to make sure that we're being inviting, we're not being overly combative or arrogant in the way that we're approaching this. We're challenged to write more than 7 purposeful and organized paragraphs. So again, purposeful meaning that we've thought consciously about how we've constructed a paragraph, the different quotations or ideas that we might include in there, and we've also thought about how we've organized these paragraphs, right? But we need to write more than 7, so keep that in mind. We're challenged to create a purposeful title that alludes to the focus of our essay and follows the title-subtitle format. I'll talk more about this as we work on our drafts. But I want you guys to think about a title that alludes to the focus of your essay. So remember, we had lots of practice when we were doing our journal entries. So think of a creative title that also indicates what the content of your essay is. So somebody who reads your title should get a glimpse of what the paper is about, right? We're challenged to show ownership and pride over our work, taking care to eliminate major or distracting spelling, grammatical, and typographical errors. So in other words, we're showing that we care about this thing that we're creating, right? So we're taking ownership over it. We're taking responsibility over the things that we're creating and putting into the world. And if you think about it, whether you like it or not, a piece of writing is a representation of you, the care you put into something, how you've worked on something, right? So we want to make sure that it's a good representation of the hard work that you put into this, right? So showing our readers that we actually took time to make sure that it's ready to be presented to the world. And finally, we're challenged to format our essays according to MLA guidelines, 12-point Times New Roman font, double-spaced, 1-inch margins on all 4 sides. So left, right, top, bottom, all 4 should be 1-inch margins. And then finally, we want to have a works cited page that's formatted according to MLA guidelines. So you're going to want to use your little Siegel handbook to help you with that. Now, this is especially important in a paper where you have multiple sources because we need to make sure we're keeping track of those sources for our readers. So a couple more items I want to highlight here. So here are our due dates for this project. So the first thing is the annotated bibliography, and I'll go ahead and post another video where I explain that and walk you through some examples. The annotated bibliography is due Sunday, May 3rd, and that's going to be through Turnitin by midnight. Draft 1 is due Sunday, the 10th of May, same thing on Turnitin by midnight. Draft 2, Sunday, the 17th of May. And then finally the polished draft, Sunday the 24th of May. This is the very, very, very end of the semester. So that's the final thing we'll be submitting. A couple of notes here. For this major essay project, you must submit all components by expected deadlines in order for this project to be considered complete. If you cannot meet an expected deadline for any one of these components, refer to the project deadlines and late submissions policy in the syllabus. So in other words, that you're just talking with me about that. But we want to make sure that we submit all 4 of these components. So annotated bibliography, draft 1, draft 2, and the polished draft. All 4 of those need to be submitted in order for this project to be considered complete. Additional note, in our writing we are encouraged to embrace confusion and contend with complexity. Approach your essay with these attitudes in mind rather than try to show your reader what you already know. Try to show your reader how you worked your way through something that you didn't already know. Again, you're not trying to prove that you're right about something. So use your writing as a way of learning for you. All right, well, stay tuned for further updates and videos that explain these ideas. Start thinking about your topics, y'all.